existentialists are great believers in free will, in that you have choice. But the free will has parameters, right? There are still things that you can't get away with. And one of them is, you fundamentally can't get away with being immoral. The structure of existence is set up, well, one of the things you might say, if you were thinking about it existentially, is immoral things are precisely those things that you can't get away with. That's why people have identified them as immoral, is that they will inevitably, the consequences of enacting them will inevitably be brought to bear on you or on the people you love, or it'll snap back in some way. You know, and I see this in psychotherapy very often too. People will engage in the same kind of behavior over and over. Well, there's a classic definition of insanity, which is insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome each time. And there's an element of self-deception in that. It's like people will run out a procedure that ends in tragedy, and then they'll repeat that over and over. And you can lay out for them the causal connection between their actions and their conceptions and the outcome. And they'll listen. But there's no change whatsoever in behavior. And so then they run through the routine again and bang! And what they're doing is immoral precisely because whenever they implement it, it produces the kind of catastrophe they claim to want to avoid. Because, you know, relativists, modern relativists like to think of morality as something that's just arbitrary, like it's a cultural construction. You know, in society 1 thinks that A is bad and society 2 thinks that B is bad. And when you get right down to it, there's no commonality underneath all that. But the existentialists sort of undercut all that, and they just say, well, what's immoral are those things that you could change, that you do, that result in outcomes that are catastrophic for you. That's it. That's what immoral is. And so that's universal, because it doesn't really matter what the details are. You know, like what you do that's immoral could be very much different than what you do. It might be temperamental. You know, we're each in our own playing field in a sense. But there's a commonality underneath that, which is, well, for example, you won't get away with deceiving yourself. You just can't. And the reason you can't is because you need a model of the world that's like the world. And if you try to live in a model of the world that isn't like the world, you'll just bump into the world. And so the deception brings with it its own punishment. And that's why it's immoral.